Heartfelt pranams, loving greetings, Ashirvad, joyous and blessed Diwali to each of you, respected, revered, and beloved souls and friends on this blessed path. I can't tell you what a joy, special privilege, and really unexpected when we began the planning that on this most auspicious day, I would have the opportunity to be with all of you, all of the dear followers of Gurudev Paramahansa Yogananda and the path of Kriya Yoga sadhana, path of inner light, inner God realization. What a joy to be with all of you. And also with all who may be here for the first time. Is somebody here only for the first time? Raise your hands. Wonderful, very special welcome and blessings to you. We're so happy you found your way to this sacred ashram, and most especially on this day of Diwali. My prayer for you and for all of the souls, all of the beloved devotees here today, is that from this day forward, having found your way to this path of divine light, this path of yoga, this path of God realization, never again will you have to walk in darkness throughout your life. That is my prayer, that is my heartfelt wish for new and the seasoned devotees as well. When we come together like this for satsang, in my estimation, it's not about words, it's not about class, it's not about discourse. Satsang is a vibrational exchange of consciousness. We come together to feel that contact, to share with each other that contact, that fellowship with truth, with Sat. Truth is light. And on this holiest day of celebrating the victory of divine light over all darkness of ignorance, all darkness of evil, I specially invoke the light, the blessings, the divine touch of our Gurudev and Param Gurus on each one of you. Please receive. Please sit up. Please close the eyes. Turn the attention and the gaze to the kutastha, the spiritual eye, the point between the eyebrows. Be calm, be still. Feel that divine portal of the kutastha opening wide to receive the light, the presence, the blessings of the divine ones who guide and sustain and enliven this path. Feel the blessings of Om, that great light of God, that great light of the Creator Lord, which carries into every particle of created universe, every particle of our beings. It carries that blessing, that consciousness, that living presence of these great ones. As I invoke their presence, humbly imploring them to flow into your brain, to flow into your heart, to flow into your soul with the light and the victory that is the true meaning of Diwali. Feel that blessing. Om Bhagavan Krishna. Om Jesus Christ. Om Mahavatar Babaji. Om Lahiri Mahashaya. Om Swami Shri Yukteswarji. Om Gurudev Paramahansa Yogananda Ji. Light, Jyoti, Ashirvad, blessings on each one of you. O great Gurus, lead us from darkness to light, from ignorance to wisdom, from death to immortality, from uncertainty to the divine security of being anchored at your holy feet until we find our own self-realization. This is my prayer. This is my heartfelt wish on this holy day of Diwali for each and every one of you. Jai Guru. We have traveled here from the US by way of Italy and Germany, and then a brief but wonderfully inspiring program in Noida, New Delhi, only to arrive here with the precision of divine timing on this holy day of Diwali. And it is a very wonderful opportunity to remember the real light, the real heritage, the real gift to humanity that is represented by our blessed and beloved Mother India. You know the ancient name for India, Bharat. Bharat. Ba meaning light and knowledge, Rata meaning devoted to. In other words, Bharat, the ancient name, the eternal name of blessed India, means devoted to light as against darkness, as opposed to darkness. Oh, how much that light, how much the world hungers for that light today. I can tell you, having coming from and visited and met with devotees from all over the world, in the US, in Europe, and those who come from all around the globe to our ashrams in the US, what a reverence, what a hunger there is for that light which is the true gift of India to the world. Yes, now India, during these times, India, just like the rest of the world, is going through a time of transition. Yes, there is social challenges to be met. There are material challenges to be met. There are growing pains, you might say. But behind that, that's the surface. That's analogous to our outer life, where we have these physical bodies that have different duties, different challenges, different phases of growth, different problems to solve. That's the outer existence. But inside, just as each one of us is illumined and immortalized and made divine by the presence of the soul, so the soul of India is that spiritual light that has dwelt immortally in this holy land, stewarded, nurtured as a gift to all humanity. And I don't say that lightly. I don't say that lightly because it's my conviction, my humble opinion, more than opinion, this is the truth, that the ancient achievements of the rishis, the yogis, the seers, the illumined ones, the divine ones that have been the lifeblood of India for all these countless thousands of years. They're discoveries. They're discoveries of the science of the soul. Yoga. Yoga is the science of the soul. Yoga is the science of divine light. The science of victory of good over evil. Their discovery of those methods, of those techniques, that represents the crowning achievement of the human race worldwide. And how blessed are we to have been drawn to a modern expression, not just an expression, but a modern portal to the purity in all of its ancient glory, in all of its modern relevance and significance of that science of the soul. You know, the word guru. Guru means dispeller of darkness, isn't it? Guru, understood correctly in its true significance, Guru is the kindler of that divine light within. Guru is the kindler of that light of yoga, that light of divine perception, that light of self-realization, that light of God realization. And if we ask, how is it that India has managed to hold on to and never lose sight of this divine endowment, this divine heritage of light, of spiritual knowledge, of blessing, as a steward of that light and blessing for all humanity? The answer is right there before us. It is in those illumined ones that India has produced generation after generation that not only preserve a memory or a history or a intellectual knowledge, but actually embody that science of the soul. This is the real inner observance of Diwali. Yoga is the real inner observance of Diwali. So how blessed we are on this holy occasion to be gathered at this ashram, and specifically at the feet of our Gurudev, Paramahansa Yoganandaji, one of the great Shankaracharyas of past generation, rightly observed that as a bright light shining in the midst of darkness, so was Paramahansa Yoganandaji's presence in this world. Such a great soul comes on earth only rarely when there's a great need among humanity. A bright light shining in the midst of darkness. And on this day of Diwali, let us consciously offer gratitude and renew our receptivity to what that light represents, what that science represents, what that yoga represents. As I said, satsang, the teachings of Yogoda Satsanga Society, a self-realization fellowship, teachings of Paramahansa Yoganandaji and his lineage of enlightened gurus. It's not about intellectual knowledge. And those of you who have come here for the first time today, and those who may have been here many times, it came to my mind that what could be a better encapsulation of the real inner spirit of Diwali, this wonderful little book, Where There Is Light. Where There Is Light. On this festival of light, this festival of inner light, those who are maybe here for the first time want to know a little bit more about the ashram, about the teachings. This is what I recommend to you on this day of Diwali, is Where There Is Light. Because that light brings wisdom, it brings inner strength, it brings attunement with the source of guidance. Most of all, it brings that awakening of the light of realization where we know we are the Atman, we know we are the soul. Just for a moment again, I ask you, sit up straight and close your eyes so we can feel together, so we can experience together a glimpse of the power of the presence of that light. Again, lift the gaze gently to the point between the eyebrows. First, when you look into that space, it may be only darkness, but behind that darkness is the light of the soul, the light of the very presence of spirit in the human form. Now visualize that darkness gradually beginning to glow, to be filled with a golden light, golden dawning light. Visualize and feel that light filling the darkness of closed eyes. It's a comforting golden light. It's a warming, a welcoming, and embracing golden light. Now, as you continue to gaze into that radiance of gold, visualize and feel and perceive a sphere of radiant, opalescent blue light in the center of that field of gold. A sphere, an orb of sapphire, opalescent blue light. Feel that light awakening your divine perception, your spiritual consciousness. That is the light of the eternal presence within creation of the infinite Creator Lord, the infinite Spirit, the light of Kutastha, of Krishna consciousness, of Christ consciousness. Gaze into that light, feel that light. And now continuing to visualize that field of gold with the sphere of sapphire opalescent blue in the middle of it. Then in the very center of that sphere of blue light, see and visualize a radiant, diamond-like, silvery white, five-pointed star. It shines with the radiance of 1,000 million suns, but a soothing, a cooling, a calming, a spiritualizing light. What you are visualizing now is the divine manifestation of that spiritual eye, that center of divine consciousness, that portal of divine consciousness. Through that star, through that silvery white star, let your feeling, let your perception, let the yearning of your heart, the calmness of your mind and thoughts flow into that. That is the light of the soul. That is the presence of spirit in the highest center of consciousness in the brain. Now, let us take this deeper. This is what we are doing here today, is not only outwardly celebrating, but realizing and experiencing the inner Diwali, the inner lighting of the lamp of wisdom, of divine perception, of bliss. Our Guru Dev, Paramahansa Ji, he so much loved this beautiful chant written by the great Rabindranath Tagore. You all know it, you have chanted many times. As I repeat the words, hold on to that visualization, hold on to that perception of the beautiful radiant light of the spiritual eye. Field of gold, sphere of opalescent blue, silvery white radiant star portal into the divine presence. The words of the chant, which again express the essence of Diwali. It goes like this. It says, "In my house, Lord, with thine own hands, light the lamp of thy love." That lamp is now burning in your consciousness, burning in your forehead, burning in your inner sanctuary of the soul. It goes on, "Thy transmuting lamp entrancing, wondrous are its rays." Feel what that means. That is a description, that is an actual perception of the power, of the vibrancy, of that holy portal of Jyoti, that holy portal of divine light that you are visualizing, that you are feeling, that you are opening. Transmuting lamp entrancing. What is transmute? Transmuting means to take something that's in a gross form, a dark form, and spiritualizing it, elevating it, increasing its vibration, increasing its, or refining its vibration so that it becomes spiritualized. Transmuting lamp of the spiritual eye. As you gaze into it, it is transmuting, it is refining, it is banishing darkness, it is washing away all the material grossness, the material ignorance that collects around our consciousness as we perforce live in this material world. But if each morning and each evening we practice that science of light, that science of the soul, that science of yoga, let that transmuting light, as Tagore says, thy transmuting light entrancing. Oh, entrancing, it absorbs us. Once we have a glimpse of that light, once we have an experience of the touch of that light, we are entranced. We are absorbed. We are caught in the net of the love and joy, the light and spirit of the divine presence. And then it goes on, this beautiful invocation, referring to that transmuting light, that lamp of divine love. The devotee implores that light, implores the spirit within that light. Change my darkness to thy light, Lord. Change my darkness to thy light. This is not just poetry. In deep meditation, practicing, especially meditation after practicing the techniques of the Kriya Yoga science, that light is an actual vibratory force that's even measurable by modern science. The effect on the brain cells is measurable. But even we don't need to hook ourselves up to instruments. Who needs that when we can feel that transmuting light, when we can feel that purifying light, changing the brain cells? Hold in that light any spiritual wish, any spiritual goal that you have for being a better person, for overcoming any impediment, any limitation, any bad habit, any restlessness or bondage to matter. Let it be burned up. Let it be transmuted. Let it be swallowed and washed away in that light. Change my darkness to thy light. Change my darkness to thy light. And then we feel, sitting at the door of my soul, O Lord, light thy resurrecting lamp. You are sitting at the door of the soul. By the grace of our Satguru and the great ones, and by the sincerity of your own efforts at practicing of meditation, that light, that resurrecting lamp, may ever remain ablaze within you. May ever remain glowing and guiding and blessing you. Feel this as an experience. Feel it as a blessing of grace, a blessing of light on this holy day of Diwali. And even if it's only a glimmer, even if it's only a glimpse at this stage of your spiritual unfoldment, then hold on to it as an inspiration, as a motivation, as a promise. And you'll find through practice of daily techniques of meditation and going into that stillness, going into that light, it changes our whole being. It makes life a completely different experience. You know, every time I have the privilege of coming before a large group of devotees of this path of Kriya Yoga, and particularly in the consciousness today of Diwali, of victory of light over darkness, one only has to look into the faces, one only has to look into the eyes of the devotees of the Kriya Yoga sadhana, those who practice meditation, who go beyond just a philosophical or inspirational approach to the teachings and actually use that as a daily discipline, use that as a daily sadhana. Your faces glow, your eyes glow with light. That is the power of this Kriya Yoga science. And again, the real Diwali, the Kriya Yoga science, the techniques that our Gurudev has given us, what a treasure, what a lifelong blessing and source of strength, of power and upliftment. It begins the four principal techniques that you all know, that you all practice. These are taught in the Yogoda Satsanga lessons. And by the way, how many are receiving the new edition of the lessons? Wonderful, beautiful. Even if you have been following the lessons and the teachings for years past, decades past even, you've gathered from that study wonderful advancement, wonderful blessings, wonderful awakening of light within yourselves. I know, I see it. But let this past year of introduction to the new lessons, let it be a new beginning. Go back and start with those A, B, and C, the first steps that all devotees take on the path. Let it be a resurrection. Let it be a renaissance of your sadhana, of your spiritual path. It begins, as I said, it's founded on these four principal techniques. First, practice of the energization exercises. Oh, what a wonderful, each of these four techniques. I'll spend a little time on each one, but each one of these, on this day, think of that in terms of how I can make that victory of light over darkness a permanent victory, a permanent achievement in my life. Every day we practice those energization exercises. What are we doing? What are we doing? We are making a conscious connection with our human power of will, with that ocean, with that vast flood of divine light, of divine life, of divine vibratory creative power. It flows in through the subtle center of consciousness at the base of the brain, in the medulla oblongata. And by that technique, we learn to bring that into the body, to send it to each of the body parts. All of you who practice that know what this does, what that one technique alone does. You become convinced at a very profound, a very foundational level of consciousness, you become convinced, I am not a physical being. I am not a fragile, vulnerable victim of the difficulties and challenges of Maya. I am a vehicle, I am a receptacle, I am a channel of that immortal light, that immortal life energy. And then from there we go into sit in our meditation asana, and we begin with the practice of Hangsa technique. Profound, powerful, ancient gift of India to the world. By practice of Hangsa, many devotees actually have their first conscious awareness, their first conscious glimpse of that light of the soul that we are visualizing at the spiritual eye in these past moments. Why? Because Hangsa removes the restlessness, it removes the impediments of ignorance, the static, you might say. The mind is like a radio. It can be attuned to the broadcast of inspiration, the broadcast of joy, the broadcast of the presence of the divine. But if it is not properly tuned, all we get is static. That's the restless thoughts. That is the condition that undiscriminating association with the world produces in the mind. Hangsa is the antidote. Hangsa, as each of you know who has practiced this technique, it produces that stillness. It produces that evenness of breath, evenness of feeling and emotion, stillness of thoughts. And then we realize we don't even have to look for the light. It's always been there. It's always been there. Energization exercises, Hangsa technique. And then the gurus have given us the third powerful technique, the technique of communion with the great Om. Om, that vibratory presence of God, that is light. That is the vibration of the Creator who has formed all of this material cosmos, all of this astral cosmos out of divine light. By practicing that attunement with Om, we hear that vibratory sound of the pranava. We glimpse, because vibration produces sound and it produces light. And as we use that Hangsa stilled mind and then go deeper into the attunement with that all-pervading, powerful, eternal, immortal vibration of divine presence, that begins to attune the consciousness, that begins to change the consciousness, that begins to baptize the consciousness in divine light. Energization exercises, Hangsa technique, Om technique, and then the crown jewel of Kriya Yoga. Kriya Yoga opens that pathway of light. You know, there's an outer path that we all follow. We may have come from many different backgrounds, many different circumstances in life. We may have been drawn to the spiritual path by any number of different factors, any number of different interests or desires or yearnings or wanting to be better, wanting to improve, wanting to draw closer to God, wanting to find purpose in life, wanting to find meaning in life. All of us come from these infinitely varied backgrounds. But when we undertake the practice of Kriya Yoga, then we are on the universal, we are all on the same path. And you know where that path is, all of you who practice. That path is the spinal highway to the infinite. That is the path that followers of any spiritual tradition, anybody, any saint, any wise person, anyone who has found the way to realization of God, no matter what their outer spiritual tradition, whether it is a Hindu or yoga tradition or Buddhist or any of the other paths of India or Muslim or Christian or Jewish or any of the paths, all of that is outward. When the time comes for actual contact of God, all go on that same highway. That is why yoga is universal. That is why these YSSSRF teachings and techniques are for the whole world family. It's a blessing on all of mankind, which is as the rishis, as the yogis millennia ago envisioned. The world is one family. Truth is one. The wise called by many names. And the path is one. The path is that spinal highway to the infinite. By practice of Kriya Yoga, we gain control of that, the actual pranic forces that work in the body and mind, and that keep us, you might say, blinded. So all we see is the darkness of the material world. Daily practice of Kriya gradually begins to dissolve that screen of darkness. We begin to first perhaps feel that presence of divine assurance, divine peace within that comes from calming the being, holding the body still and in the upright meditation posture, and then practicing those techniques. First we begin to feel, then we begin to perhaps intuit, and then eventually we realize. We realize that we are and ever have been the beloved, immortal, invulnerable, joyous children of the divine. What greater purpose could life have? Those who haven't found, those who haven't awakened to that purpose, they live in misery. They live in uncertainty. They live in frustration. They live in running from one ephemeral, temporary goal or achievement that they think is going to give them meaning, that they think is going to give them a sense of validation. And it never works. Because as soon as that is achieved, then one begins to say, well, what's next? What's next? That wasn't enough. Now what? I want more. I want more. That wasn't enough. And it's never enough. It's only enough. It's only the only fulfillment as human beings that we will be able to find, incarnation after incarnation, is in the gradual ascent of consciousness and life and energy and awareness up that spinal highway, through the practice of the techniques, through the practice of Kriya, into that immortal ocean of light. Then we have achieved the victory of light over darkness. You know, outer ceremonies, outer holidays, these are wonderful. Look how much joy we feel all around the whole city, all of India. And yet even that is just like one little drop in the ocean of the joy that comes from the real immersion in light, the real immersion in the divine presence. As I said a while ago, and as we visualized and experienced, the basic fact, the basic truth that we must build our lives, build our ambitions, and build our aspirations on is one truth, and that is that within every human form, each one of us, without exception, there is this divine spark of light, of joy, of immortal existence, which is the actual reflection of the infinite spirit in the human form. Now, why is it that it's so difficult to remember that? Why is it so difficult to draw on that, to express that, to live in that consciousness? Yoga teaches that even though in the human form, that soul can never be violated, can never be removed, can never be damaged, still it can be obscured. And in our human existence, in our mortal existence, yoga tells us that there are these progressively gross coverings, these sheaths, koshas, yoga philosophy calls them. We look at ourselves in the mirror and what do we see? The outermost sheath, the sheath of matter, the physical. We think of if we go by the testimony of the senses, we see, oh, there's this physical body. I am this person, I am this height, I am this weight, I am this age, I have these characteristics. That is total ignorance. And that is, we never want to allow ourselves to remain for one moment longer than necessary in that confining, limiting. We cheat ourselves. We cheat ourselves of what we really are as long as we allow ourselves to remain convinced that we're only a mortal being. Then that underneath that is that next finer sheath, that next finer kosha, the pranamaya kosha of life energy. As we meditate, as we become calm, as we become more and more proficient with the techniques of meditation, we gain conscious awareness of that life energy. We begin to feel that, yes, I have this outer covering of physicality, of material body, but underneath that I feel this wellspring of life, this wellspring of prana, wellspring of energy. And then here's where yoga becomes the savior of each and every one of us. We are able to use those pranic forces, use that energy in the body through the techniques of pranayama. Kriya Yoga is the highest form of pranayama. Other techniques, the energization exercises, the Hong Sa, the other techniques of meditation are also powerful techniques of pranayama. We use that sadhana to gain control of those forces and then to use that to transcend the next covering, the next sheath, the sheath of mind. Manomaya kosha. That's the mind that keeps the senses deluded and engaged. That's the mind that's constantly involved in the limited and ultimately delusional input from the material world. But once we're able to go beyond that mind through the practice of meditations, then we unfold the fourth of the successive coverings of the soul. Jnanamaya kosha, the sheath of discriminative insight or awareness. This is the higher mind. This is one of the first fruits of the practice of meditation, of the practice of these techniques, is we begin to identify, we begin to connect with, we begin to draw from that higher mind, that faculty of soul discrimination that becomes then an intuitive guide through our conscience. You know, conscience is a very real, and it's a very divine gift that each of us has. Conscience is what expresses from the soul through that higher discriminative mind. And then as we use that awakened discrimination to guide our lives, to remind ourselves, to keep ourselves oriented and focused on our real and valid purpose in life, which is to discover our innate divinity. As we use that discriminative mind to choose the right actions, to prioritize our lives so that we have time not only to fulfill our material duties and our responsibilities to the body and to the family and to society, but also our responsibilities to the indwelling God within us. When we arrange our lives, when we prioritize our lives according to that set of priorities, according to that set of insights and wisdom, then gradually we find ourselves unfolding even that fourth covering of the soul, and we glimpse the final, the subtlest envelopment of the soul, the Anandamaya kosha, or the bliss sheath. Soul is bliss. Soul is infinite, formless, absolute spirit, with a very fine covering, individualizing it from the infinite, but that covering is bliss. So one by one, through the practice of yoga, through the practice of the techniques, this is how when we pray that beautiful and immortal prayer that has come down from India's higher ages of truth, lead me from darkness to light. Well, don't let it just be words. Lead me from darkness to light in a practical application. The real achievement of that is unfolding those coverings of darkness, one by one. First, the outer material delusion of being a physical body. Then the still delusive, but a little bit less dark, covering of life energy and feeling and emotion. And then the mental processes, and then finally awakening the discrimination and perception of bliss. That is the process of lead me from darkness to light. And there's only one way ultimately that we can guarantee the achievement of that. When I say guarantee, I mean irrespective of ethnicity, of gender, of religious background, of nationality, of age, no matter what. All of us are the immortal children of God, and all of us have those exact same divine potentials that can be unlocked by the real observance of Diwali, which is the practice of Raja Yoga. Do you follow? Do you understand? Our Guru had a beautiful description of this process. Let me read you his words because they're so vibrant with the power to bestow this perception. He tells us the way to a higher life is through the gradual expansion of your consciousness from delusory identification with your human nature and limitations. You see, that's just what we've been talking about. The delusive identification with those outer coverings that limit us, that bind us, that make us, that hypnotize us into thinking we're fragile, that we're victims, that we're subject to the cross currents and winds and storms of delusion. No. Stand up, awaken into that light, as he says, to the perception and expression of your inherent divinity. And this is so powerful. He says, life becomes ever more beautiful, richer, and more wonderful in every way as you progress step by step to higher and more refined states of consciousness. Again, just what we were describing, one by one, going from the gross outer material phase of our existence, of our life, to more and more refined expressions of consciousness. Life becomes ever more beautiful, richer, and more wonderful in every way as you progress step by step to higher and more refined states of consciousness, and thereby see through the coverings of matter and gross vibrations that obscure the glory of the indwelling Spirit within you and pervading all creation. Beloved ones, that is the purpose of life. There is no other goal, there is no other achievement with which the soul can ever be satisfied permanently. But in the same breath, we say, thank you, Lord, thank you, Guru Dev, because you have given me not just the awareness of possibilities, but the actual tools, the actual methods, the actual techniques by which I can bring about this achievement in my life. How blessed we are. You know, on this, I started off by saying how privileged and how what a joy it was to have arrived here and to be here with all of you on the day of Diwali. We should all reflect for a moment the specialness of this place, the sacredness of this place, because, as I said, India has been the nurturer. India has been the steward of this immense and most powerful and crowning achievement of human knowledge for millennia, for centuries and thousands of years, for eons. And you know, from this very ashram right here, that light, that power of yoga, that knowledge of the liberating path of Raja Yoga meditation, of Kriya Yoga meditation, from this very ashram began to expand and spread to the world at large. Remember that? 100 years ago, 99 years, but 100 years next year, in this place that we now have memorialized in the Smriti Mandir, our blessed Guru Dev, Paramahansa Yogananda, was sitting one day in meditation. And as you all know from Autobiography of a Yogi, he had that vision, he had that divine call for which he had been prepared, not only in this life, but for incarnations past, but certainly consciously groomed, first baptized by Lahiri Mahashaya, the one who was instrumental in the renaissance of Kriya Yoga in the modern world, trained and disciplined and awakened and molded by the great avatar of divine wisdom, Swami Sri Yukteswar, and then blessed by the Supreme Guru in our lineage, Mahavatar Babaji, who told him, "You are the one that I have chosen to spread the science of Kriya Yoga worldwide." From this ashram, he had that vision. He got on the train, went to Calcutta in a matter of hours. Only a few weeks, short weeks after that, he was on the boat to the United States, and the world was, from that day, changed. The world was from that day changed. And we are still just seeing the beginnings, really, of the power of that great divine dispensation, that great outpouring of light, that great outpouring of the light of yoga, the light of India's most beautiful, most treasured gift to humanity. So we are very blessed to be here. This Ranchi ashram, as I said, has a historic significance, great historic significance, but more than that, it has an energetic significance in the quality of darshan, the quality of blessing that each one of us feels if we come to these grounds in a receptive state, in a state of a real seeker, a real devotee, to feel, yes, I am in one of the most significant Guru Pitas of the world, the seat of divine light, the dispeller of darkness, in one of the great Yoga Pitas of this world, from which the real yoga, the deep and advanced and liberating yoga, began its salvation-producing work, spreading worldwide. We are in one of the great Jyoti Pitas, centers of light. And what more appropriate, what more wonderful venue to come together on the day of Diwali. Our Guru often referred to a very well-known saying from India's scriptural lore, and this is what I want to leave you with in connection with this last series of reflections about the blessings that permeate this holy ashram, the darshan that one experiences inside, in the kutastha, in the heart, when one comes as a receptive devotee to this holy ashram, to these sacred grounds. Because outwardly, we are reflecting that inner journey that we all undertake in meditation. And Guruji used to often quote this. He said, giving this illustration about our journey from darkness to light, he used to say that if you take a huge lump of coal, black coal, and you can immerse that in gallons and oceans of water, you can wash it for thousands and thousands of years, million years in the ocean, you're not going to wash it free of that blackness, of that darkness, are you? But then he said, if you take that same lump of darkness, that same lump of coal, and embrace it in fire, what happens? It begins to glow. It begins to radiate. It begins to be made effulgent. It begins to be made illumined of light. And he said, same thing happens in our consciousness. Same thing happens in our outward absorption and hypnotized state in which we only see darkness. We see darkness in the material world around us. Darkness meaning uncertainty, fears, frustrations, cross currents of emotions, all of the things that ultimately drive us to the spiritual path. That is the darkness of the material world. No matter how often the worldly person bathes in the waters of his own dark mentality, he will never change. He'll never expunge that material darkness. But when that person, when that soul comes into the aura, comes into the proximity, comes into attunement with the fiery wisdom of a real guru, a true guru preceptor, and that fiery wisdom baptizes the disciple's dark, undeveloped mind, then the mind, then the being, then the consciousness loses that darkness and will burn forever with the golden flame of wisdom. That is real darshan. That is real attunement. That is the real contact with the teachings of YSS SRF, with the teachings and the mission and the work of Paramahansa Yogananda. Don't remain on the surface. Don't remain on the outside. Use those techniques. Put yourself into that embracing, fiery glow of Guru's divine consciousness and see how it changes you. I see how it changes because I'm looking out at a sea of changed faces of many, many who have followed this path, followed these teachings for a long time, and I see what it does, and you know what it does. So be transmitters of that light. That is our first duty in this world is to awaken to that light, to become established in that light, and then to become a giver of that light. A giver of kindness, a giver of love, a giver of understanding to all whose paths we cross. And then the world becomes a little brighter, a little less dark, a little more attuned with that underlying divinity and divine presence. And we have a much greater and growing awareness that we really are, all of us together, the children of the divine. We are all one blessed family with common needs, common yearnings, and a common destiny. And that destiny is light, that destiny is wisdom, that destiny is immortality, that destiny is bliss. Keep on until that is the reality in which you live and move and have your being. That's my prayer, that's my heartfelt good wishes, expectation, and conviction that each one of you will achieve. May the God of light and joy and wisdom dwelling within each one of us and pervading the entire universe awaken in each of your hearts May the blessings, the divine awakening touch of our Guru Dev and our revered lineage of Param Gurus, the dispellers of darkness, reach out their hands of light, reach out their hands of divine love, reach out their embracing aura of protection, and envelop each and every one of you. Jai Guru, Jai Guru, Jai Guru.